Okay, great. Yeah, so welcome to the, I believe is this the third, the fourth? It's the weekly meetup. That's all that matters. So I have a few things to go over. As always, just a reminder to everyone. Um, there's never really a specific, topic that we need to adhere to at these meetings. It's more so, it'd be nice if people can mention in advance if there's something they want to talk about in the meetup channel. Um, Now, I have some things to go over, and I believe Notorious has some other things that he wanted to go over as well. And I'm not sure if you had anything you wanted to go over, Mr. Wicks, but we can get to that, I guess, after I go through my announcements. So I guess what I'll start with is what I just mentioned earlier in one of the chats I mentioned. I've noticed some interesting in, I've noticed some interesting numbers in terms of Atmos while looking at a few various statistics such as the Block Explorer on Crypto ID as well as looking at Cryptopia. So one of the first things that I've already mentioned is I noticed that previously on the rich list of wallets, the aggregated wallets, number 2 used to be held by the Cryptopia wallet, and that wallet has been declining. Um, so I mentioned in the chat that back in February, that wallet was showing around 13.5 or so million Atmos in total on Cryptopia, and since then, right now that number has come down on Crypto ID down to about 8 point something million. So we can see a decline there, but we also know from the way that chain analysis works is that this number is not going to be highly accurate as to all the coins that are on Cryptopia. So it got me wondering if maybe there's a way to figure that out. So what I did notice was Cryptopia actually has some undocumented API. So for example, when you inspect how a page loads, you can see sort of the requests that your browser is making. So one of the interesting numbers that I came across is, or one of the interesting requests that I came across is that the way it actually shows you distribution, it actually shows you only the top 200 accounts holding whatever coin you're looking at on Cryptopia when you view the distribution. And this is actually a parameter in the URL. So it got me thinking, okay, so what if I increase this number? So this is like, one of the various steps you do to sort of, play around with an undocumented API. You change a number to see what kind of results we get. So what I noticed was as I increased these numbers, as I increased this number, the amount of Atmos that was showing up on Cryptopia when I summed the total was also going up. And I think about when I peaked the number out to about 2,000 is around where it stopped. This was just random guesses. So what I learned from this information is it actually gives you back, just as you would see visually in the chart data, the exact amounts that people hold across their hold on their wallets on Cryptopia, like per account. So in total, let me just pull this back up. So in total, when I checked about an hour ago, um, it was showing on Cryptopia there are a total of around 1,700 different Atmos holders. So that means there are 1,700 accounts on Cryptopia that hold Atmos. And in total, the amount of Atmos that's on Cryptopia is approximately 11.38 million. So slightly higher than what we saw from the number that we were getting from the taint analysis done on Crypto ID. So this has a few interesting, things in terms of what it means. It means that there's a lot of holders that we are unaware of or that aren't engaged in the community. We can clearly see that we don't have 1,700 active people on, Discord. So it's hard to also say, how many of these people are active traders, or if these are just dormant accounts on Cryptopia, or how long they've really been holding this Atmos for. So I can't really figure any of that information out since I've only started recently checking this. So I think every time we do a weekly meeting, I'm going to try to update you guys on these numbers, the total number of holders on Cryptopia, as well as the total amount that's on Cryptopia, because I think it's interesting to look at for a variety of reasons. So aside from that, in terms of development, I've pretty much completed the networking code. I'm just working through some debugging in regards to it, and running some of my own tests. So now I'm sort of like in the testing phase. Once I'm fairly confident that all of that is working, which hopefully will be in the next day or two. I'm a little behind where I expected I would be, but not behind in terms of the allotted time. So we're still on schedule in terms of all the estimates I gave before. Um, so once that's done, people will be able to run a node, which will the nodes of the network will be connected together, and we'll be able to transact. And so what I'll be doing is sort of building in a transaction, sort of almost like a faucet, where every user, any new generated account can sort of just claim some coins that will get minted out of essentially thin air. Which is no problem, because I mean, this is just a test net. And so the main purpose of this test after the next update, which I'll be working with Notorious to test, um, as well as a few other people in the community, is to just ensure that block relaying is working. So that means blocks are relaying from one client to another correctly over IPFS. And the other thing that we're mainly going to be testing for is that the state database is staying in sync. So that mainly has to do with the balances of each account within the system. So after a couple days of testing that and writing some applications to sort of stress test the testnet, what I'm going to look to do is introduce the index transaction. So that is the transaction that contains a little bit of extra data, and that extra data points to the metadata on IPFS. And after that gets introduced, the next change I can put out after that, we'll be introducing MongoDB and sort of replacing out some of the flat file database handling that the code currently has, and utilizing MongoDB. And finally, once that's done, so that might be within, like, let's say a 2-week time frame, that won't need as much rigorous testing as like this current update that's coming out, because it's more important that, again, the balances stay in sync. So once that update is actually out, then we can start looking to expose some of the testnet API to the web, and then we can start having some web interfaces get built on top of the testnet. So that'll obviously have to do with the whole idea of having sort of videos and movies and whatnot on the testnet. So that's currently at where we're at with development. It's going pretty well. So in the last, like, I guess week and a half, I've had 3 developers reach out to me who are interested in building stuff on Novusphere. One of them is actually in this meeting. His name is Code Blue. I'm gonna turn it over to him in a bit. It's for him to talk about what he's been building. But first I'll talk about what the other 2 people who reached out to me. So when Code Blue reached out to me, he actually already had some visual work done, which he had forked the web wallet that we had developed, and he built some additional interfaces into it. So this is sort of along the idea of what we had in mind with developing interfaces to navigate the idea, navigate the content within Novusphere. So the other 2 developers, on the other hand, they had some ideas. They were interested in building a forum, sort of like Reddit, which I previously talked about. I think this is one of the potential big use cases for Novusphere, is having a form of communication that is censorship resistant. Very important to have. It's also part of the reason why I think Memo Cache as sort of, been popular in the Bitcoin Cash community, despite the fact that you are essentially losing money as you use it. So that's something we want to avoid, obviously, with the way our system works. Um, so these other two developers, though, I don't really have a lot to go on in terms of gauging them, aside from, skills that they told me they have. So where I'm at with them is I actually told them, I said, okay, here's some work I think would be interesting to have done. So some work regarding the Novusphere.io site, some cleaning up and a little bit of redesigning there since that's been overdue for a while. And I said, once you show that to me, we'll then talk about, doing further development the on the testnet. So on the other hand, like I said, Code Blue actually has shown me some of his work, so I'm gonna let him show it to you guys, and he can sort of explain to you what he's been building and what he hopes to accomplish.
Where should I post a link? Should I post a link in
Can you post it in the meetup chat?
Meetup? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, basically, it's just like a small tab on the top nav bar for the search. I've been working on effectively implementing sort of like a search and content for like video streaming and stuff like that. If you click on the search and then right now the search doesn't actually do anything, but if you like hit enter or you click search, it'll bring up a list of 2 animes, and then if you go into them, there's the description and synopsis and everything you would assume, like, that you would expect from like a video streaming site. And then there's an episode list on the top. If you click into that, there's a list of mirrors, and then you can go through the episodes. You can upload them, download them. So yeah, basically it's just a simple demo that I built out before I contacted Asphyxia about working with him.
Yeah, this looks really nice, man. I just wanted to say on behalf of the community, welcome. It's
oh yeah, thanks.
Developers, come on.
Yeah, it's great to see that, we're having some developers reach out to us and looking to build stuff on the platform. Okay, so hang on. Okay, so, yeah, so I can give an update here on the white paper. So I had sent that over to Unicron to do some review of the white paper. And I believe he got back to me a little bit just before the meeting. Maybe you can give an overview, Unicron, of where we're currently at with that. If you're here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm just getting used to this thing. So I read over the white paper, and I realized it's pretty low detail. It's low level detail. Yeah, which is basically a broad overview of the whole system. So I just, if you look over it, I was modifying a lot of terminology in small ways, such as adding more of a look on it being content agnostic rather than specifically, let's say, for video IDs or something like that. It's good to keep it as broad as possible. Otherwise, I think this paper is pretty much done, I think, for the most part. But the high detail overview maybe belongs in a wiki or something like that. With I don't know how you feel about it, but it's just a lot of detail to cover. And I pretty much am dedicating this entire week to just working on this stuff. So I expect a lot of various media and stuff to come out during this time, basically in the next, 5 days or something.
Okay, so, but you would estimate that the high-level overview of the white paper will be ready probably by sometime during this week.
Yeah, we should probably have a meeting over that and discuss it, just to narrow down a few details. But otherwise, yes, I think it's we had it polished for a while now, or at least the concepts. So I'm not too worried about it.
Okay.
But the specifics and so on, we can go into detail a bit later.
Okay, yeah, that's great. Once that paper is ready, what I wanted to do was update some changes on Novusphere.io to just get things up to date. And then another thing that I wanted to do, which I had talked to Crypto Mom about, is relaunching the Bitcoin Talk thread using sort of the new graphics as well as updating all the links and resources in there, since there is a lot of clutter in the old thread, which is no longer really relevant to the project as much because there's a lot of broken links and there's a lot of information that's changed since then that thread was last launched. So I think this is a good chance to sort of get a fresh start on Bitcoin Talk as well as get some new eyes on the thread. So I'm looking forward to getting that done later this week after we have the white paper polished. And yeah, I agree entirely with what you said about putting together sort of like a wiki or either that or a high level spec document that's sort of a more technical paper that obviously goes into the finer details and the technical implementations involved in Novusphere.
I
Yeah, I
think
guess that could go on GitHub, for example.
I was going to say a GitHub knowledge base.
Yeah, exact. That's exactly what I was thinking. So I believe other than that, um, Notorious had some things that he wanted to go over that he's been involved in. So you want to take the floor?
Oh, sure. So, I'll just keep it brief and say that recently I've been working on a side project with some friends, and essentially, actually, I'll credit the idea to Davs. Honestly, it was his idea. But that being said, I've been working on this project to essentially automate the creation, maintenance, and continuous integration of masternodes. I know it has nothing to do with Atmos, as we're not a masternode coin. But Asphyxia gave me the floor to just speak for a minute about what I'm creating. If anybody's interested.
Yeah. So hang on. I just want to stop you there, and I just want to remind everyone that in these meetings, what we talk about doesn't have to be specific to Novusphere. I want to obviously keep you guys as up to date with things that are going on, but I do want the community to engage with one another in a meaningful way. So feel free to share what you're working on and get input from the community. And so that's why I offered this to Notorious and anyone else who'd like to speak about things that they're working on.
I appreciate that very, very much, man. Anyway, the name of my service is Nodesoft. I would give you the website, but honestly, I'm not too proud of the way it looks right now. It's kind of bastardized. We put some different technologies together just to get the back end. What's important though is coming very, very soon. You're going to see the name plastered all over the masternode space. So, if you guys are interested, pay attention to Nodesoft. Maybe hit me up with a DM, and I can maybe give you a demo, show you the service a little bit. Let me know. Anyway, all that being said, I appreciate the time to kind of talk a little bit about the project, and if you guys have any questions, just DM me.
Master nodes for the win.
Yeah. So do you want to go into any further detail about like how it works or like what it is?
Oh, sure. Sure. I didn't want to like shamelessly plug it. I didn't want to take up your time.
Well, I figure there are a few people that are at least interested in masternodes in this community. I see the discussion happen enough in the trading chat, so.
Oh, fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, okay. Basically, there's a few other services out there. I'll just name one, for example, that's associated with masternodes.online, nodeshare.in, and a few other services like that aim to provide you like you go buy a masternode, they set it up for you, manage it for you. You pay for like a year and your masternode runs. I see a large amount of problems with this business model. Even if they're managing the service for you, they can't provide you an actual promise of 99.9% uptime. The only thing that they can promise is that they're going to watch the services for you and update from GitHub, make sure the masternode staking, that sort of thing. But this is all manual intervention. There's no automated solution to this currently. For the past few months, my team and I have just been building an automated solution toward this. We have heavy background in server management, and to that end, we essentially created continuous integration services that pull files from GitHub anytime a new release is published. And once a new release is published, we automatically update a Docker container, which is also itself continuously updated every time a node's blockchain receives a new block header. This allows us to distribute our servers across a wide network and essentially ensure a trustless and continuous automation service. Wow, I just talked a lot about that. Anyway, somebody I would love to have had at this meeting is Dabs, because actually this was his idea. He was pretty sick of having to always log into his Linux servers and manage his master nodes. I don't know if that's a problem with like anybody else here, but like the hosting and management of nodes has always been like a pain in the ass, especially like say you're an exchange owner, and you know you need to run 10 nodes. Well, a service like ours could also apply to you on a corporate scale. You know, you could definitely automate the continuous integration of any GitHub software. So anyway, that's pretty much, you know, that's all I really have to say on the subject at this particular moment until I have a demo to show off. I mean, I do have one. The website is nodesoft.io. However, that being said, again, it's not amazing at the moment. You need an HTTPS on that, I think. But I'm just not proud of showing it off until the new front end is put in place, which we're currently doing a mad dash towards. We're not front end designers. We're server guys. So, you know. Anyway, I'll turn the floor over to anybody else who wants to talk, because, you know, that's.
Unicron, anything interesting going on over in EOS or any of those type of projects that you follow?
Not too much. There's some discussion about how much cost it takes to maintain block producing nodes. But overall, I mean, some people are concerned that maybe they cost too much to maintain and the system can't pay for them quickly enough. But overall, I don't think that's been visible very well, because I think as the system builds up in use, the value tends to go up, which is very nice because it lets people afford better block producing hardware.
So we're specifically talking about on EOS, right? Because of the nature of how the smart contracts work. If I'm correct, EOS uses the same engine that Ethereum does. It still uses the same EVM, or were there changes to that?
No, it uses a different, uses WebAssembly, which is first, so it uses C++ compiled to WebAssembly to launch stuff. And he says he'd only expect like about 40% slowdown between the core logic and the smart contract logic of the system, which is kind of nice.
So the contracts then are written in JavaScript, or?
Oh, C++.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And then compiled to WebAssembly.
I mean, I guess this is probably not the best question to ask you, but to me, C++ seems one of those languages that you wouldn't want people writing smart contracts in. Agreed. Because smart contracts already have plenty of problems with them, especially with people overlooking things, and handing people a language like C++. It sort of seems like you're giving them two guns instead of one to shoot their foot with.
Agreed completely.
I think it does. He said it doesn't really matter as long as it compiles to WebAssembly in the proper manner, but because that's the final goal, I guess. But he also says that there's a lot of tools and wrappers and stuff for it that makes it okay, and also the fact that the blocks refresh all the time, that memory management isn't a big deal. I haven't really read in detail about it, so maybe I shouldn't comment yet.
Man, have you ever had to compile libboost for C++? This is what, if you're talking about you have to write a solution in C++ to deploy a smart contract, what you're not saying to your consumers is, oh, by the way, you have to spend 6 to 12 hours compiling software before you can do it.
So yeah, these numbers of running Node actually reminds me of a statistic I came across that I shared with Notorious recently, which was, so I did an estimate, with videos as to, how much metadata space might be taken up if, let's say, we had a video gateway that was sort of being used in production to a high level extent.
Let me just
So-
hold you up there for a second and say this was in response to a question I had asked at the previous meeting. I was asking just for a general idea of how big the blockchain might be.
So this doesn't actually relate to the size of the blockchain, because the size of the blockchain would be much smaller than the number I'm about to give. This has to do with sort of extra data that your node could hold if you were interested in having this content available to you. So this is specifically video content that I'm talking about. So in the case of a video, some of the metadata that might be associated with it might be a title, a description, some genres, maybe an episode number, maybe a season number, and so forth.
Like some of the things
Yeah.
that Code Blue has on his search.
Yes, that's exactly actually a good example of this type of metadata you would expect to see. So all in all, I ran some estimates, which was if we say that a popular website has about 5.5 million videos, I can just crunch some numbers here. Give me just a moment. So what I was estimating was the metadata is very, it's unlikely for it to be above 1.5 kilobytes per video instance. So again, it's not, the files are not hosted on the chain, but rather a reference to the metadata is on the chain, and then the metadata also then makes a reference to the file. So this is again why Novusphere can work with a variety of storage layers, and why various storage coins complement the Novusphere system. So again, using 5.5 million, and if we say there's about, just a moment. So if we say there's about 1.5 kilobytes per each of these files in terms of the metadata, once you download that, let me just... So you'd have maybe about 8 gigs of data on your hard drive, which isn't too bad if you think about this being a production level of a lot of people using this website. So I don't think that's actually too bad. Now, obviously, as major use cases go up, so let's say this is just talking about the video aspect of it. So let's say we did have a major forum, such as Reddit, built on it. I don't have metrics to go off of to sort of estimate how much space Reddit would take up on the hard drive. But if we maybe use the same number as a benchmark, it's not too bad in terms of at least what we initially expected. That, as well as the fact that a user, for example, if you're only interested in the forum and you're not interested, let's say, in the videos, you can always prune away that extra content, so you don't actually need to download it and keep it. And obviously, of course, the way we expect most people will access content is through third-party hosted nodes that are either hosted by the community or by the development. But obviously, we want to ensure that you do have the capability of accessing the network by self-hosting, and simply by allowing users to do that, we ensure that there isn't any censorship on the network.
I think just to bring that from abstract into reality, it's like the difference between, you can always go to a third-party website, find a link to a streaming video and watch it, but I think this solution is much more clean, because I'd rather download an application to my own computer and ensure that I'm not getting censored or not getting monitored or that type of thing.
Well, another thing that's really nice about the way it works is it makes community contribution very easy in the system, and that can be easily moderated through upvoting and downvoting, very similar to how an approval system works. If all the video mirrors on a video are broken, somebody can submit a new mirror, and I'm sure other users will be thankful for that, and be willing to tip them, etc. Whereas a lot of centralized sites rely on the administrative team maintaining them, as opposed to the community maintaining them.
Yeah, I had to downvote one of Code Buru's videos because it only works for people in Japan. So
yeah, I think that's about it. Unless anyone has anything else they'd like to talk about. I don't know if you had anything
I
you'd
thought
like
Mr. Wicks was working on something.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if you had anything he wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so
Oh, actually, hang on a sec. There is one thing that I forgot about. Maybe Cryptomon can give us an update on, reaching out to, all the other coin market cap and Livecoin.
Oh my god, everybody asks this question. Like,
Since everyone asks this question.
Also, Crypto Compare.
Crypto Mom, can we get an official answer to this question? What's up with CoinMarketCap?
I can't believe you guys are going to make me talk right now. So I've reached out to CoinMarketCap literally like at least 15 times about changing the ticker and the icon, and I got one response from them, and then they asked me to resend the icon and the ticker information, and then that was about a week and a half ago, and I have not heard anything back from them. Everybody else has been pretty decent about changing it, but CoinMarketCap, I literally haven't heard anything back. So we were kind of hoping that everybody in the community could get involved in reaching out to them. Hopefully, if we can get some more attention, they'll move a little bit quicker.
Yeah, I think a bunch of tweets at them will get their attention pretty quick, man.
Yeah, so I linked their tweet I think it was in general. So if you guys can help with that, that would be fantastic.
tweets,
I'm doing
Reddit.
my part.
Is there a downvote button on CoinMarketCap? Because I would love.
There should be. Yo, so Mr. Wicks, man. I've been working a little bit with him on what he's been doing. So I'm actually just curious, like an update on where he's at anyway. So why don't you tell us?
It's been a little bit of a while since we've done a stream and everything, but we'll have some coming back up for Vega. We're working on right now on the development side of things, the market watcher, which is basically taking CoinMarketCap and we're just going to do it way better than they're doing it. And hopefully that's going to be published out there on the web here sometime soon. Also, as far as the automated trading system, we're still working on optimizing some new strategies with that, and I've been working with Notorious quite a bit, coming up with some new strategies that we can use with automated trading. And then we're going to look.
Tell them about the sexy thing you're doing.
The sexy?
The one that makes them interested.
Yeah, so speaking of master nodes, we're actually, I'm not going to drop the whole bomb in details, but we're looking at refactoring our smart contract and creating a master node system with Vega.
On ERC20 token?
Yes.
That doesn't seem fun.
It would be the first ever to do it and be able to basically create a master node staking system with Vega tokens in another smart contract that communicates with the original one. So,
interesting.
So
that sounds pretty freaking awesome.
we're pretty excited about that. To be the first ones that would do it. So we're going to be testing that, and we'll release more details as the week goes on. But it would be a way for people to stake some Vega and make some coins in it. I could see it being used as a model for other contracts as well.
Oh, so you're doing like an ERC specification?
Yeah, we'll be doing an ERC specification after we've finished most of the testing and figured out all the nicks and crannies. So,
Damn, dude.
yep, pretty excited about that. But on another note as well, we've been reaching out to some other communities looking for a partnership. I just had a discussion the other day with the Maker Die coin, and the people over there were really open to suggestions on implementing some artificial intelligence and machine learning with their current collateral debt position system on Oasis. So it's I'm going to follow up with that, and it's possible that we integrate some things with them.
With DAI?
Yeah, Maker.
Stablecoin?
Yeah, the stablecoin. And kind of the Oasis is basically the whole system for the DAI stablecoin, but that includes the Maker coin as well.
Huh. That's actually pretty cool stuff, man. That's you guys are up to the craziest shit ever. I swear to God. No, I'm mostly working with him on automated trading strategies, but he told me a bit about this ERC thing he was doing. But nah, man, that's pretty fucking exciting.
Yep.
No idea why your coin price is low, dude. No idea at all.
It could take a little bit, but I'm hanging in there. That's what's important, is sticking it out, and I don't look at the price too much.
Yeah, I think you're a lot like a spec in that regard. You're just the price is kind of arbitrary to putting out the software,
Right.
Yeah, I'm more interested in the number of holders and the amount that's on Cryptopia. But yeah, if anyone has any questions or any other topics they'd like to hear us talk about, or they'd like to talk about with us, now's a great time.
I got some questions for Code Blue if he's willing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was actually just interested in you've obviously brought back the sacred video interface. That's like basically what everybody's been pining after. I was told that shit's coming in June, and then it crops up immediately. That's pretty awesome. I was just curious if you're planning on actually expanding on this, like if you're doing further development on this.
Yeah, it's it's still in the early stages. I've only spent very small amount of time on this, so there's still a lot of work to be done. And yeah, if there's any suggestions and stuff, you can throw some my way or whatever.
Yeah, man. My team would be really interested in helping you develop this in the future. So, keep in touch, man.
Okay.
How would you like to do some live streams with me and stuff to show off some of what you're doing?
What do you mean?
Well, I do live streams on YouTube for what we have over in Vega, but you could kind of show us how you're developing it and just walk through some of the interfaces that you're creating.
What's interesting is I could see some real potential in integrating artificial intelligence smart searching into your platform.
Yeah.
It's like I could see a very real potential there. That's interesting.
Yeah, I do like to be on camera. You wouldn't have to be on camera or anything, but it would just be something like, you could just walk us through the interfaces you're creating, maybe show us a little bit of some code that you would
yeah.
be okay.
My code's on GitHub, so yeah, I'm
Well, just kind of walk through it and explain what you're doing.
Yeah. Most of the.
I'm sorry.
Most of the code that all the code that I'm doing right now is front end. A lot of the integration stuff is still, I have to finish building out the front end before I integrate with the network. So, yeah, all that stuff it's not really a secret.
Yeah, so this kind of goes back to what I said last week, which is we want the system to work in such a way where it's very friendly towards anyone who's used to typical web development, and essentially you use Novusphere as a replacement to a traditional database. So the way you design your infrastructure isn't actually all that different. So we want to keep things as friendly as possible. So right now, just for clarification, the stuff that CodeBlue has created doesn't actually work off of using any data on Novusphere at this point in time. It's like filler data. But obviously, once that testnet is ready to go and you can interact with the API, then it can start pulling in some real data and publishing real data to the testnet. So yeah, anyone have any other questions or topics they'd like to talk about?
No, I just wanted to say I, for one, am excited as hell to hear that third-party developers are, pitching ideas and trying to come on. What's your thoughts, Asphyxia, on? I noticed, on the roadmap, there's this section called Hackathon. What's your thoughts on putting on one of those pretty soon?
So later down the road, when the testnet is more easy to use and available, it'd be great to put something together along those lines. At this point in time, if we were to put one together, people really wouldn't be using anything that we've built so much as just building sort of skeleton websites.
Oh, okay, I got you. So you're saying when the testnet's more robustly developed, you're planning on doing it?
Right. We want people to be able to actually interact with the testnet when we look to do that.
Sounds good, man.
So Vega, when's Bitcoin hitting 10,000 again?
Ask the bot. Let's find out.
Soon,
Ask the bot. Ask the bot.
Let's see. I'm not running it right now, but I'll let you guys know.
Oh, god damn it. That's just anticlimactic. In fact, I demand a Discord webhook for it now.
Okay. Yeah, we had it running on Telegram, and we haven't hooked it into Discord yet, but we could definitely do that. So we can ask.
You got caught on the spot right there, dude. You pulled a straight jab on him.
I'm trying to stream here. I'm not running the Vega bot, man.
Yeah, I just actually want to go over something I missed it. Aside from CodeBlue, there was actually 2 other developers, although they were a team, that also reached out to me. But I haven't seen their actual work yet, so I can't really vouch for them or say, whether it'll be worthwhile working with them. So I'm sort of waiting to see what they have to offer in terms of skill. But as I said before, we're always on the lookout for talented individuals who can build some useful things for the system, and we're more than happy to bring them on or financially compensate them for their time.
I think if that's the case, do you think maybe you should add a career section to the site?
Yes, that might be something we look at doing, because I mentioned before what I actually told the 2 other developers who reached out to me was to sort of redesign, or give me a redesign for how they envision the Novusphere.io site would look like, and to sort of clean it up. So we can.
So just to make this perfectly clear, so I understand this, your company is actively hiring.
I wouldn't call it a company so much as I would say the community.
Oh, okay. Your community is actively hiring now. That's what you're saying.
Right.
Like it's kind of a
Cool.
bounty program in a way?
I wouldn't call it so much of a bounty as I would call it more like a grant. It's... So, if people just come in and they say, here's my resume, do you want to hire me? The answer is no. Because, a resume doesn't really tell me that much about you. But if you can... And not only that, but if you just come in and say, here's some projects I've worked on, unless I actually go through and fully audit those projects, I don't know what's been copied from other places. I don't know if it's even entirely your project. It's very easy to steal code, in this day and age, and fraudulently portray something as yours when it's not. So, given that, it's a lot nicer when someone uses the approach like what CodeBlue has done, which is he approached me and he showed me what he's done, and he said, "Here, look, this is what I've built so far. Here's what I'm interested in doing on your platform. What are your thoughts on it?" And my instant response was, "Okay, this looks very cool. It's very in line with what we planned on doing in terms of the videos. It can be easily adapted to support TVs and movies. So if you're interested in financial compensation, either paid in like some form of cryptocurrency or directly in Atmos, we're happy to provide that to you, so that you're not just spending your time for free working on the project, especially when we consider what you're developing is valuable." So, but we'd love to see more of that in the future from other developers, and hopefully the other two developers who reached out to me are able to produce something that's very cool that they can share with the community as well.
Yeah, I really
I just
like
want to
that
say, I
idea.
think that's a really good step. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Wicks.
Oh, I just said I really like that idea. It's, I think you and I are in the same boat on this, Asphyxia. If anybody wanted to ever, pitch in and help out with things over in Vega, I would definitely, feel the same way, and keep the floor open to anybody that wanted to put in some development work, offer them some cryptocurrency.
No, I just think it's a huge step for these communities to be opening up their doors to development and incentivizing it for financial gain. At the end of the day, no developer wants to work for free, and I think one of the biggest barriers, like why Novusphere in general didn't advance at the pace some of the investors initially wanted it to, was lack of developers. Like, we just didn't have enough people working on it. But also, I mean, there's obviously a lot of other reasons than that too. But I think the fact that developers are being incentivized now is super healthy for the project. So awesome, man.
I thought I'd throw a bone to Road Crypto since you mentioned that in the chat. I don't know if you know this, Road Crypto, but Amari from Bitcoin Cash, he actually took a lot of the work that Peter had done on Peter Woolley from Blockstream, that he had done on parts of the code that related to SegWit, especially like how transactions are serialized in the new format. And he sort of stripped his name off the code and kind of just put his there. And there was some like random code refactoring for no apparent reason. So yeah, plagiarism goes on even in bigger communities, and it's really unfortunate that people don't always get called out for it. I think it's one of the worst things that you can do, especially with open source software, is to strip someone's name off of the software when they especially if it's licensed and it's free for anyone to use. So that's probably one of the biggest slaps to the face that you can give, is to strip their name off of it. The least thing you can do is give them credit for the free work that the free labor that they've provided to you.
I actually have a friend who works for the Open Source Foundation, and I'll say one thing on that subject, and that is to say, nobody gives open source maintainers and developers enough credit, and Asphyxia is absolutely dead right about that. You use their code, give them credit, man. Come on.
Yeah, anytime we pull something like some machine learning algorithms or anything from another GitHub, we definitely make sure that we put the credit in there for them. So
anyway, I really love the format of these discussions, man. We always have such interesting stuff to talk about. I just wish more of the community members would chime in. We got a couple people to talk though. I'm pretty happy about that. Maybe we can hear from like Odrak or Hivemind or something sometime. Oh, you know what, Void, man? I bet you Void has a bunch to say.
Yeah, the floor is always open to whatever topics you guys want to talk about. I mean, I know one big thing that a lot of people like to talk about is the whole trading aspect of crypto, like what projects they're looking at, and that sort of thing. So the community can always feel free to engage in each other in that sort of way.
I wanted to comment on the front end designs, I guess, how challenging they are for this Novusphere, for example. Like looking at the website I just opened this random link, and for example, it has episode 1 through episode 12, right? But since it's user contributed, it could be any combination of word episode, a number, or just anything in general. So it's very challenging, I think, to sort the real metadata versus noisy metadata, or just malicious, maybe to just annoy people. It's very challenging to have this portrayed properly on the website, because usually people don't have to deal with just horrid databases with completely randomized names and everything.
Yeah, of course, this is a very important thing that you bring up. I mean, another really important thing that's worth mentioning is, especially with interfaces that are natively integrated into the same software that has access to spending funds, you have to be careful that such software doesn't have vulnerabilities in it. And I think we saw something like this earlier in 2017 on Ether Delta. There was an exploit that had to do with code injection, where the way they were displaying the name of a token, the name of the ERC token, it was being written to the document and they weren't escaping the string. So someone actually put a small piece of JavaScript code in there for the token. And what that piece of JavaScript code did was it actually hooked into the function after a user's wallet was decrypted on the interface, and it would basically steal their ether. So
I'm not gonna lie to you, that's a pretty ingenious hack.
So this is obviously a big problem, and you need to rigorously consider any of the code that gets submitted, and code review as well as debugging are probably some of the very long and tedious tasks that are involved in projects like this.
Well, this year.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this year BitGrail lost like $100 million because they were securing their crypto with client-side JavaScript.
Yeah, I know that, for example, Notorious is friends with Greg, and I know for a fact Greg can vouch, because I know Greg does a lot of code review for Bitcoin Core. So, it is one of the tedious tasks, but it's also very interesting, because you're also looking over someone else's code and trying to consider the exploits in it. So it's a little more interesting than perhaps looking at code that you wrote yourself. But as Unicron said, yeah, interface design in Novusphere is actually this is actually a good point. It's a little different than typical web development, because you do have to consider noisy metadata that might not perfectly fit standards. Whereas when you're dealing with a traditional website, you always know that you're getting clean data. So this is definitely an added challenge to front-end development, but I don't think it's impossible for the web developers to overcome. It just requires additional checks in terms of data sanitization.
Wait, is that front end or back end? Because I'll be getting that data from the back end, right? Or the API call.
Well, so what I mean by that, for example, is so you don't always know, let's say, what the length of a title might be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't always know what the length of a description might be, or how many episodes there might be. So you might want to handle certain things like that differently. So for example, if, let's say you have 1,000 different mirrors, you probably don't want to display buttons for all 1,000. Maybe you only want to display mirrors or clickable buttons for the top 5. And then the other 1,000 are available in like a drop-down. But let's say there's only 3 mirrors, then maybe you don't actually want to display the drop-down. You just want to display 3 clickable buttons to navigate through those mirrors.
How would we deal with, let's say, someone submits something where like the episode name is like not correct or something like that, like just as a joke? I don't know, like.
So that data is definitely going to still be in the database,
Yeah.
but we can sort of filter through that using approval voting, as well as a few other things. For example, so with certain interfaces, let's say, for example, with what you're building, it's very easy to build in sort of like a checkpoint on that. So what I mean by that is, it is possible to build in things where you have to approve it before it actually will appear in the interface. But that sort of check to see if it's approved would be part of the front-end code. So it's not as if the information is actually censored, because that check can easily be removed by anyone.
Right.
So it's not a censor that's forced.
So yeah, we're not preventing shitty metadata. We're just trying to allow us to filter it on the front end so that we don't
Right.
display it.
So there's certain validation you're going to want to do to make sure like all the fields are there for a certain piece of data. So for example, as you said, let's say a video is submitted, but a series information is submitted, but it doesn't even have a title field. Well, that's sort of invalid data, right? It doesn't conform to the full structure of.
I'd also like to point out, in design-wise, it's completely possible for you to check a few valid sources. I mean, especially if you're dealing with video data, there's really like only two sources you need to check, 2 or 3. I mean, if you're dealing with porn, maybe a third. But I mean, there's not very many sources you need to validate data. For example, IMDb to make sure the episode titles are correct, or My Anime List to make sure anime episode titles are correct.
Yeah, but what if, let's say, they took the video source of another episode? So we can validate the name
that can
is
absolutely
correct.
be abused, and I think that's being addressed upvote downvote system.
Yeah.
And that shit can absolutely be abused, and I think was one of the first things that we started addressing with the first iteration of the video interface. Like I think
So a big reason that we ended up.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We ended up axing a lot of that was because with us centrally hosting everything and people not being able to self-host, it does create huge liability on our end to moderate everything. And but even to a further extent, which is when we were using the centralized database, we basically have the same policies that, let's say, Google does. So we had legal liability when doing it. So it was within our best interest not to sort of take that down, just in case anyone did decide to abuse it for whatever reason.
In the case of your interface, I would say in terms of design suggestion, I already see an upvote downvote system. Just weighing the videos, which mirror of the video is presented first should definitely rely heavily on the vote system. As for vote manipulation, good luck, buddy.
Well, vote manipulation will be based off of, let's say, the balances on the account when they cast the vote. So it'll be very similar to how, right, exactly, the total number of vested atmos. So it'll be very similar to how people vote for delegates and block producers. So it's not exactly as easy to sybil it in terms of having a bunch of downvotes or a bunch of upvotes, like what happens on, let's say, YouTube. There's actually financial collateral that's involved in doing it.
Fair enough. That's a good point.
So it doesn't actually cost the user anything to upvote or downvote.
It still sucks that there's a certain amount of manual intervention required for that sort of detection. I suggest looking in. Well, look, like he said, say somebody uploaded all the metadata for the wrong episode or episodes out of order, with all the correct metadata, passes validation checks, but the video it's actually out of order. It's not the correct video, right?
Okay.
I would suggest, just like personally, that you look into a few open source machine learning systems that have been released that allow you to actually inspect a video and determine if it's correct, as well as extract content from the video. I'll link you via DM to the open source projects. I don't know if you deal with machine learning at all, but in general, it's not that difficult to implement with like JavaScript and stuff. So
what's an example of where they pull a baseline from to be able to validate that? Did they look at IMDb or something?
Well, I mean, since the design of the system has a bunch of mirrors already, I would assume that you can just check his other mirrors, and if one doesn't sync, then that video gets axed.
Okay.
Yeah, sure. Send it my way, and it's something I can take a look at, and we can consider down the road.
For sure, absolutely.
Yeah, so anyone have any other topics or anything that they'd like to go over?
I think there's already built-in. Okay, I think there's already built-in, or at least planned ahead, reviews of data submitted So we're not designing for IMDb or anything. We're designing for agnostic, data agnostic, or content agnostic representation. Basically, it could be your custom made videos that people make as you put a bounty out for them. It could be any number of episodes and so on. So it has to be ready for anything. Ideally, new content would be great. People request a video of some kind, like whatever, adult, like funny, whatever they want, and other people compete to provide it. And then we were discussing earlier, we'll have to go over it again, but two different levels of review, so subjective and objective reviews. What do I mean? So I mean, like, we don't have to host like IMDb on
Oh,
here.
I'm sorry. I was shooting my question to Road Crypto, trying not to
Got it. I'm just saying that IMDb is not the target exactly. It's more of just any kind of content. And we're not even video specific, but it should be pretty generic for across different media types, audio, video, images, even programming, possibly code, text, And something to consider is we were discussing two different review mechanisms for this, which is kind of like not masternodes exactly, but two more ways to earn money. And Asphyxia can weigh in on this and what he thinks about it after all this time, after we discussed it. But one of them was basically the judges or the arbiters, which review the content subjectively, as in does it fit the description and so on if it's challenged. And that's a big part of the system, which was actually the original proposed system to protect against how do I say this? Does it subjectively fit what it's describing to be? And the other one is, does it actually provide the data, which is something that's missing from a lot of data online, or all the papers that talk about decentralized storage, and never talk about whether the data will actually be shared, or it will be just challenged if they have it, and they'll reply with an answer with a hash or whatever, or a response to a hash. But nobody ever checks if the data is going to be actually uploaded to the users. And we were thinking about like a secret police sort of thing. You know how there's a secret shopper program in stores where random people go to random places, they're hired for, and they test different things. And if it doesn't work, they get a bad grade. So similar here, we were thinking like maybe you could have nodes, basically another level of master nodes, something like internet police nodes that sample different videos, that are submitted and they check them for actual upload speeds and so on to meet some criteria. So we can see that not only is the data matching with the arbiters, but also is the data accessible with the police nodes. That's it.
Yeah, so that has a lot to do with the bounty and judge/arbitration system, was just sort of having quality control over sort of the content that's passing through the system and trying to fulfill the bounties by the bounty hunters. So it's a pretty good overview. We'll definitely go into more detail about that in the more technical white paper, so you guys can look forward to reading that soon.
I absolutely look forward to reading the white paper. It might go way over my head, but I look forward to it anyway.
Yeah, we planned on reaching out to some of so I guess another thing I forgot to mention is we had a user come into the chat, I believe earlier last week. I believe his name was Zadman2017, and he reached out to us and he gave us some specific information regarding some exchanges and people to contact for certain things. But one of the big reoccurring things that we saw coming up was exchanges typically asking for a link to the white paper. So once we actually have that out and we have the new Bitcoin Talk thread out, which we're hoping to have this week, we plan to reach out to those exchanges and we'll see what they have to say. Hopefully they're more responsive to us than CoinMarketCap has been.
Given that your testnet's out now and you're going to have a white paper out, I think that you're going to see a lot more adoption on these other exchanges.
Oh, I won't be able to do my creative Cryptopia analysis as well, then. But yeah, so we'll see what happens, I guess, over the course of the next week after we have that out in the new Bitcoin Talk thread. But yeah, other than that, I think that's about it for this week, unless anyone has anything else they'd like to add.
Nah, man, riveting conversation as usual. I look forward to next week.
Yeah, okay.
Cool.
All right, guys. Have a
Thanks,
great
Alan.
night. I'm out.
Hope you guys enjoyed your weekend.
Take care, everyone.